to options, which is essentially just merging two arrays. So we okay, so let me start from the beginning. This is mentioned in other tutorials, but I'll go ahead and mention it again. We are just setting a default value from. However, if the options are set, we want to go ahead and merge settings with options, i.e. the option that's provided inside of here, we want to overwrite this value with. So this will become 10 in the case that we've provided it as 10 here. So hopefully that makes sense. Now what I'm going to do is go ahead and alert out this setting just to make sure I've got it right. This is just something I always do. So I'm going to alert out from, settings from, because remember we're working with an array here. Let's go and refresh. You can see that it says 10. This is the value that we did provide here. If I go ahead and change this to 3, for example, and refresh, we get the value 3. So we know that this value here is being sent through options. It's then overriding this value here, so it's changing it here whatever we provide, and then we're just alerting that out. So we'll get rid of that for now. We don't actually need that. Okay, so let's go ahead and create the actual functionality of the countdown, and then we'll go ahead and provide the callback function a bit later on. So the first thing I want to do is just up here, because we're using this, i.e. this selector, inside of a function in a minute, we want to select or create a this selected variable, and that's just going to equal this. And that's so we can just use this variable here inside a function down here, which we're going to create, and this is called countdown execution. So inside of this function, we're going to run the code over and over again by using an interval, and we're using this selected because we need this to be global. Hopefully that makes sense. If you know about global and local functions or variables, sorry, the scope of variables, then this will make sense. So inside the countdown execution, or rather outside, first of all, we want to set the current value, so the current value that we're starting the counter at, and this is settings and from. So we're starting at, for example, 10. Inside countdown execution, we want to reduce this value by 1 each time. So current is equal to current minus 1. Quite simple. What we then want to do is place the current value inside this selected. So this will equal this because we're using it in the function, i.e. this countdown div. So we want to go ahead and say this underscore selected. Remember, we're using this outside of here because it's now global. Dot text current. So now at the moment, because we just have this function here, we're not actually calling the function at all. But if we go ahead and call countdown execution and refresh, you can see that 10 is being put into this div. So that's worked, but we actually want to run this every 1 second because we want the value to increase by 1 every 1 second. So we create an interval and we call this, or we create an interval using set interval, and we call this interval. So interval equals set interval. Inside here we give the function name without the parentheses, so countdown exec, and then 1000 for 1000 milliseconds, i.e. every second. So every second this function here is going to be run using this here, and then we are reducing the value by 1 every time and placing it inside this selected, which is this countdown div. So quite sort of complicated to explain, but now when we run it, you can see that the value comes down every time. Now the only problem we have here is that we don't have a way to stop this. So you'll see that once it gets to 0, it will go into -1, -2, -3, blah blah blah. So what we want is a check inside of this function to check when it equals 0. So we say if current is equal to 0, then the first thing we want to do is stop the execution of this interval. So we want to clear the interval. So we say clear interval, and then we specify the name of the interval, and we gave the interval name as just interval, so we type in interval, and then after this we want to send the callback function ready, if you like. Now I'll write this and then I'll explain what we're doing. Callback.call this. So essentially what this means is this callback here is our callback function, and we've said callback.call, so we've sent a call back to this this here, and then we've provided just this inside. So now callback is obviously a parameter in here, so we can go and define it. So we've created our callback function as we would with any other jQuery function, if you like, or plugin or set of tools. And now inside of here we can like alert done, and because when it's got to 0 we clear the interval because obviously we don't need the countdown to continue. Then we send the callback you know, as this, so we send the callback as sort of done, if you like, which is our callback thing here, which is we've sort of supplied in here, and then we alert out done. So let's go ahead and refresh, nearly 100 minus 100 there. So as it counts down, we obviously take a look at this code, and you know, it's counting down as we specified. But when it gets to 0, we send the callback, and then we execute the block of code that we specified as our callback function here. So i.e., like I showed in the beginning, we could say window location equals something.co.uk or blah blah blah, a web address. So we've taken a look at how we can obviously supply a plugin with parameters or options or settings, whatever you'd like to call them, as we've seen in other tutorials. However, we've now looked at creating a callback function and using callback.call, callback being the name here, .call, and sending the fact that, or sending this as itself, essentially, so we know when this has completed. And then when it has completed, we execute everything within the callback function block. So that's how we create callback functions in our jQuery plugins.